Hello, I'm Alfred Archer.
And I'm Alana Swift.
We are here to tell you the story of Kodak.
From monopolistic dominance to bankruptcy.
This is part 1 of 3 parts, and it's about Kodak before 1976.
The genesis and halcyon days of Kodak.
The 20th century, the 100 years from 1901 to 2000, was the Kodak century. Kodak was clearly burgeoning from 1901, and by 1968, Kodak dominated photography worldwide, having captured 80% of the global photography market. In 1988, Kodak employed 145,300 people worldwide.
In 1996, Kodak operated in 170 of the 193 countries in the world, and its revenues totaled nearly $16 billion. It was worth over $31 billion. The Kodak brand was the 5th most valuable brand in the world.
Its profit margin was about 75% for more than a century. In 2000, more photographic film was sold worldwide than ever before. Kodak had monopolistic dominance in photography. Consumers use a Kodak film camera to take pictures on Kodak film, to be processed by a Kodak lab, using Kodak chemicals, to make prints on Kodak paper. Kodak was always just down the road or around the corner.
Kodak was as American as apple pie, baseball, the Thanksgiving turkey, and the movies. Kodak made the film stock for the movies. Kodak was an icon of Americana.
The decade from 2001 to 2010 was the decade of change in photography. If sales of photographic film worldwide in 2001 is counted as 10, sales in 2010 would count only as 1. The world changed from chemistry-based film photography to electronics-based digital photography. And Kodak had invented the digital camera in 1975. Yet, when photography changed from film to digital, Kodak failed. The failure forced Kodak to declare bankruptcy in 2012.
How did Kodak fall from monopolistic dominance to bankruptcy?
That question, and the answer to it, is the subject of this video.
Kodak's fall was so remarkable and astounding because it had risen to supreme dominance in the business of photography and imaging and had remained tremendously successful for a century. So its bankruptcy became a cautionary tale that is now a classic case study of corporate failure.
If you took pictures before 2001, you'd know about Kodak and film photography. If you took pictures only after 2010, you might not know of Kodak or film photography. But all of us have photographs of Kodak moments in the family. Kodak was a part of Americana for a whole century.
To understand Kodak's fall, it's necessary to understand its rise. Kodak rose to supreme dominance in the photography business because it excelled in promptly offering convenient and affordable photography to the consumer. It did so through excellence and economies of scale in producing and marketing cameras, film, chemicals, and paper for photography, achieving a 75% profit margin, when chemistry-based photography was the only practical way of photography. Let's see how, first photography, and then Kodak, came to be.
The Chinese philosopher Mo Shi discovered, investigated, conceptualized, and recorded what we now call the camera obscura or pinhole camera. It happened around the year 430 BCE. His works are the earliest relevant records. All cameras today are descended from the camera obscura.
In 1826, Joseph Nicephore Niepce uses a camera obscura for heliography, sun drawing, to take the first photograph in the world. Photography is complicated, laborious, time-consuming, and even dangerous. Here is a photographer and his equipment in 1858. Notice the size and quantity of the equipment.
Photographers had to use liquid, toxic, flammable, and even explosive chemicals, and glass plates.
In 1871, Dr. Richard Maddox invents dry plate photography. So, pictures can now be taken without wet chemicals. George Eastman learns of this in 1877.
The most commonly used photographic dry plate is 100 mm by 125 mm and 1.5 mm thick. It weighs about 45 grams. 100 photographs weigh 4.5 kilograms.
In 1877, land speculation is underway in Santo Domingo. It beckons George Eastman. A colleague suggests photographing the prospects. So George Eastman buys a camera.
On buying the camera, Eastman realizes the complete outfit is a packhorse load. George Eastman gives up the trip to Santo Domingo and takes up the quest to make the camera as convenient as the pencil. This is the genesis of Kodak.
One wonders, what if that colleague had not suggested photography to George Eastman? Or, what if George Eastman had gone on the trip without a camera? Would Kodak have ever come into being? Would photography have developed differently, on a different timeline?
The enterprise that would be Kodak wasn't known as Kodak at first. It starts in 1881, as a partnership of Eastman and Strawn on January 1, named Eastman Dry Plate Company. The partnership becomes a company of 14 shareowners called Eastman Dry Plate and Film Company in 1884. Notice the word film. Kodak becomes a trademark on September 4, 1888. In 1889, the Eastman Dry Plate and Film Company becomes the Eastman Company. Eastman Company becomes Eastman Kodak Company in 1892. Kodak, its trademark, is now also its name.
In 1885, the year after the word film is made part of its name, the enterprise makes available to the world a quantum leap in practicality and convenience in photography. Flexible photographic film. It's Eastman's American stripping film on a paper base. Now, 100 photographs need not weigh 4.5 kilograms, but only a few grams instead. Flexible film in much smaller rolls can now be used instead of much bulkier, heavier, and brittle glass plates. However, the paper base is far inferior to glass in transparency, so soaking in water is needed for the paper to be peeled away.
In 1887, Hannibal Goodwin patents transparent flexible nitrocellulose film, celluloid. Compared to Eastman's American stripping film on a paper base, celluloid has the advantage of superior transparency. You press the button, we do the rest.
In 1888, the Kodak camera, designed to use American stripping film, is made available. The slogan, "You press the button, we do the rest," advertised the Kodak camera. When Kodak makes other models of cameras, the first model is referred to as the Kodak No. 1 camera.
Kodak was neither the first, nor alone, in the photography business. Agfa-Gevaert had started in 1867 in Germany and Belgium. Konica had started in 1873 in Japan. Before the genesis of Kodak in 1877. Ilford had started in 1879 in the UK. Perutz had started in 1880 in Germany. All before 1888. 1888, the year the word Kodak is created, and the advent of the Kodak camera in the same year. All these maps are on the same scale. Notice the 1,000 kilometers scale at the bottom edge of the maps. That shows the relative market size of Kodak versus its competitors.
Kodak had the advantage of a continent-wide market versus the countrywide market of its competitors. Having a continent-wide market gave Kodak greater economies of scale.
Kodak could ship across the continent by rail. To ship outside the country, Kodak's competitors had to ship across the ocean. Ilford of England, in the UK, could export to British colonies overseas, but Kodak still had the advantage in shipping cost and transit time. Kodak could ship by rail across the continent. Ilford had to ship by steamer across the oceans.
For Kodak, the shipping cost from New York to San Francisco was only 18 US cents per kilo. For Ilford, the shipping cost from London to Montreal, Canada, was equivalent to 180 US cents per kilo. If Ilford shipped to Australia, the shipping cost from London to Sydney was equivalent to 300 US cents per kilo. For Kodak, the transit time from New York to San Francisco was only a week. For Ilford, the transit time from London to Montreal, Canada, was 2 weeks. If Ilford shipped to Australia, the transit time from London to Sydney was 8 weeks.
Kodak could ship cheaper and faster by rail than its competitors, who, if shipping overseas, had the disadvantage of costlier and slower sea freight by steamship.
Kodak grew with the United States. In 1854, when George Eastman is born, there are 31 United States. In 1877, the year of the genesis of Kodak, there are 38 United States. In 1961, the year of Kodak's original Kodak Moment advertising and marketing campaign, the USA has grown beyond the lower 48, to include Alaska and Hawaii in 1959, so there are now 50 United States. Kodak's home market has grown and grown.
Now back to how Kodak captured its market. Hannibal Goodwin invents transparent flexible nitrocellulose film, celluloid roll film, in 1887. Celluloid photographic film is superior even to glass photographic plates in transparency. Compared to glass plates, celluloid film is flexible instead of fragile and brittle, and compact and light instead of bulky and heavy. Kodak is the first to market celluloid roll film. The year is 1889. Instead of having to change to a new plate for every picture, many pictures can be taken on a roll of film, which reduces costs. Photography becomes portable, more convenient, and affordable. Movies are impossible with plate photography. Flexible film made movie cameras possible. In 1890, Edison and Dixon unveiled the movie camera. It uses Kodak's celluloid roll film. Here we see George Eastman and Thomas Edison with a movie camera in 1928. Eastman is on the left and Edison is on the right.
In 1900, Kodak makes the first Brownie camera available. It's revolutionary in photography. It is the first affordable, portable, and easy-to-use camera, designed to enable anyone to take pictures, without needing to be an expert in photography. Kodak makes 245,000 from February 1900 to October 1901. It is 1901. Kodak is on the up and up. The Kodak century has begun. The Kodak Brownie is a bestseller in photography. In October 1901, Kodak makes the number 2 Brownie camera available. It is designed to be user-friendly, easy to use, and more economical since its price of $2 includes film for 100 pictures. The first Brownie cost $1, but film had to be bought separately. Kodak makes more than 2,500,000 number 2 Brownies before 1921.
The 100 years from 1901 to the year 2000 are the 20th century. It's the Kodak century of glory days. The first 75 years, 1901 to 1975, are halcyon days, before Kodak invents the digital camera. The invention of the digital camera in 1975 ends the halcyon days, but Kodak's heyday continues, as film sales continue increasing every year to 2000.
In 1935, Kodak makes Kodachrome, for color slides, available. The next year, Kodachrome is available in 35mm format. In 1942, during World War II, Kodak makes Kodacolor, the world's first true color negative film, available.
World War II ends in 1945. The Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 makes the US dollar the reserve currency worldwide. And the US dollar displaces the British pound in international trade. Kodak can now trade in US dollars worldwide. This is an advantage Kodak has versus its non-American competitors. World War II also results in decolonization. Decolonization opens former European colonies to Kodak. Colonial territories which were closed to Kodak are now open for Kodak to sell into.
In 1961, Kodak launches an advertising campaign featuring the concept of the Kodak moment. The birth of a new addition to the family, a birthday, a first date, graduation, or wedding. Any event in life or moment in time that warrants being captured in a picture and recorded for posterity. Kodak is there for the Kodak moment. It becomes part of the lexicon of photography. Kodak continues making cameras simpler and more convenient to use. This effort results in the Instamatic camera, which incorporates automatic exposure, built-in flash, and film cartridges, which makes the process of loading and unloading film simple, easy, and convenient. It's a revolution in photography for the average consumer. Kodak makes the Instamatic available in February 1963. More than 50 million Instamatics are made from 1963 to 1970.
So by 1968, Kodak has captured 80% of the global photography market.
What brought that 80% to Kodak?
From the outset, Kodak's business was chemistry-based film photography. As we have seen, Kodak had monopolistic dominance in the business. The business generated a profit margin of 75% for Kodak. These became tenets of Kodak's corporate mindset. Kodak's business model, in its chemistry-based film photography business, worked in 3 steps. In step 1, Kodak sells cameras for little or no profit. In step 2, the user needs to buy photographic film, chemicals, and paper. In step 3, Kodak makes a profit of 75 cents on every dollar of sales in step 2.
The days from 1901 to 1975 are halcyon days for Kodak. Its business grew from strength to strength, confirming and reconfirming the validity of the tenets of Kodak's corporate mindset and its business model.
In 1975, a Kodak employee, Stephen Sasson, invents the digital camera. This ends the halcyon days of Kodak.
The digital camera works electronically and does not involve chemistry. Digital photography is based on electronics instead of chemistry. The digital camera enables filmless photography. This contravenes the tenet that Kodak's business is chemistry-based film photography. Kodak's response to the digital camera? That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it.
Kodak forbids the inventor, its employee Stephen Sasson, to talk about it to anyone outside of Kodak. The muzzling ends in 2001. Kodak photographic film, chemicals, and paper were not needed if consumers used a digital camera to take photographs.
Invention of the digital camera ends the halcyon days of Kodak. But Kodak's heyday continues as film sales continue increasing. That concludes part 1, the genesis and halcyon days of Kodak before 1976.
Let's stand back now to see the bigger picture. The years from 1901 to 2000 are the Kodak century, blurry days. The years from 1901 to 1975 are halcyon days, before Kodak invents the digital camera. After the invention of the digital camera, in the years from 1976 to 2000, Kodak is still in its heyday, as film sales continue increasing every year to 2000.
That brings us to the end of part 1. The story continues in parts 2 and 3.